It's Latin for many.
Tick.
Now suck your blood. Now suck
Politics.
your
Know
blood.
what you're looking at.
What's driving that thing? It's not a space alien.
Aliens. It's unidentified.
It has finally happened after
We've
50
done it.
years of not having the conversation about the UFOs in Congress.
UFOs.
They have changed it to the UAP, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, and
yes.
it took place.
That's the politically correct term.
Well, you know who introduced that phrase and that title to the public many years ago?
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Close. Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Oh, she was the first one I recall going. I think she was on
UAP.
Jimmy Kimmel or something like that, and she was like, "UAP, unidentified flying aerial phenomena. Is how you call it now?" Oh, sorry, that's
a
bad
really
Hillary.
good impression.
Sorry.
No, that's really good.
That's the kind of thing that gave me in trouble.
That might be better than your Trump. So UAP is a Hillary psyop. That's interesting.
Well, it could be part of it. Remember, there's that old photo of Hillary when she was much younger. She's walking and she's got a book in her hand and she's talking to. I think she's talking to a Rockefeller or something, and she's got a book about like life in other galaxies or something. I forget the details.
I don't recall, but
there's
believe
something. Yeah, there's something there. Anyway, the hearing took place. And there's some clips to consider. This first one here is by Congressman Andre Carson. He's a Democrat, and he's the chairman of the House Intelligence, Counterterrorism, Counterintelligence, and Counterproliferation Subcommittee. He's like
Lots of counters.
He's the super counter man. He's like a jiu-jitsu
He's
man.
the count. Yeah, he's the count.
He's the count. And he was sort of the arbiter here. He's introducing the topic for the day.
Unidentified aerial phenomena are a potential national security threat, and they need to be treated that way. For too long, the stigma associated with UAPs has gotten in the way of good intelligence analysis. Pilots avoided reporting or were laughed at when they did. DoD officials relegated the issue to the back room or swept it under the rug entirely, fearful of a skeptical national security community. Today, we know better. UAPs are unexplained, it's true, but they are real. They need to be investigated, and many threats they pose need to be mitigated.
You know, it's really interesting because I want people to recognize the parallel of the whole woke left culture. You know, the sort of victimization sort of thing happening here, where it's like all these pilots, they faced ridicule, they were not taken seriously, but now we know better. You know, it's a very
which is funny because the reason that they faced ridicule is in the past, anybody interested in UFOs was considered the tinfoil hat wearer. They would be now. I mean, the old school UFO guys are the ones who are now being called right-wing extremist terrorists.
right.
And
We've moved the category has shifted quite a bit. You're just looking at UFOs 10 years ago. All of a sudden, you're a great replacement racist now.
Right.
Yeah.
And yet, as it's being sort of laid out here, that they are also victims. So we must. It's too long. The stigma has kept us from good intelligence about UFOs. Very interesting dichotomy.
Yep. And this next clip here is of Ronald S. Moultrie, the Pentagon's top intelligence official, talking about rigorous scientific analysis to come to the bottom or get to the bottom of what or who or what's behind this phenomenon.
UAP are airborne objects that, when encountered, cannot be immediately identified. However, it is the department's contention that by combining appropriately structured, collected data with rigorous scientific analysis, any object that we encounter can likely be isolated, characterized, identified, and, if necessary, mitigated. We know that our service members have encountered unidentified aerial phenomena, and because UAPs pose potential flight safety and general security risk, we are committed to a focused effort to determine their origins.
Science is truth.
Rigorous scientific analysis.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Now, this isn't necessarily super new. We've had the reports presented, but they didn't want any more reports. They were done with reports,
right?
And so now it's really just another interesting aspect of what's going on here is many times these hearings, nothing really gets done because it is just a hearing.
Yep.
It's just people talk for a while. There's no decisions being made. There's no votes being taken. There's no nothing. It is literally you just hear people talk about stuff. And if you look at the stats, traditionally, these hearings, there is a huge uptick in congressional hearings during election years. Not because they want to do anything about it, but because it's a chance for different politicians to get some sound bites to use in their campaigns or to use for whatever reason. That's what a lot of these hearings are even for.
Right.
So while we listen to more clips, I think it's interesting to kind of consider, whether or not anything actually comes out of this. How could this be used in the new political landscape that we're moving into?
Okay, so to that point, I got a couple more clips here. This first one, or I guess it's a third clip, but of the two here, is from a Democrat, Congressman Krishnamurti. He's from Illinois. He's an Obama guy, right?
Yep.
So, and the person responding to him is Scott Bray. He's the Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence. So an interesting back and forth here. And by the way, for those of you watching, there's a little clip of one of the videos that was being discussed where one of the pilots almost hit one of these UAPs. So that's for the visual there. But here's the exchange between Krishnamurti and Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence Scott Bray.
There have been no collisions between any U.S. assets in one of these UAPs, correct?
We have not had a collision. We've had at least 11 near misses, though.
Maybe we'll talk about those 11 near misses or any place where there's close proximity. I assume, or tell me if I'm wrong, there's been no attempt, there's no communications or any kind of communication signals that emanate from those objects that we've detected, correct?
That's correct.
And have we attempted to communicate with those objects?
They're unidentified, dude, which means they're not saying, we are the aliens, we are here. But anyway.
That we've detected, correct?
That's correct.
And have we attempted to communicate with those objects?
No.
I love that part right there because it's like, these things are moving by. They're whizzing by these guys. What do you mean? Try to communicate with them? What do you? Anyway,
I don't know. They're talking about, I don't know, radio transmissions or something.
Sure. There's a little more here, but yeah.
He sounded either or perhaps both defeated by that question and perhaps even just like annoyed by the question.
Right.
Did to communicate with those objects?
No.
So we don't even put out a alert saying, U.S. Identify yourself. You are, within our flight path or something like that. We haven't said anything like that.
We've not put anything out like that. Generally speaking, for example, in the video that we showed earlier, it appears to be something that is, unmanned, appears to be something that may or may not be in controlled flight, and so we've not attempted any communication with that.
Interesting.
Right. So all this guy cares about is like, have you tried to talk to him?
Have you tried talking to it?
Have you told them
what
who we are?
Great,
it's such a weird thing, right?
But what a great soundbite for him. I mean, he's a Democrat.
He's a Democrat,
longtime Obama sort of agent guy and Obama operative since at least 2000, where he worked on Obama's 2000 election campaign for the House of Representatives.
Right.
And again, what is the purpose? There's no purpose of this question. I mean, what a silly question, except for it is a wonderful sort of virtue signal to have on the record.
Yeah.
Because if there are aliens, if there are whatever.
The Democrats tried to communicate with them.
Have you tried talking to them? Krishnamurti asks. Have you tried talking to the aliens?
Let them know, hey, we are America. This is U.S. You're in the flight path. Oh, that'll work with this thing that's zooming by 50,000 miles per hour or whatever.
It is a total virtue signal for him to have on the record for when disclosure happens and we're stuck in some sort of will we, won't we go to war with the aliens. Krishnamurti can, during his election campaign, play the clip of him talking about, have we tried talking to the aliens?
Yeah, these are the ones that are standing on top of the building on Independence Day, the movie. Where the aliens, they think that they're there with in peace, but they get blown up.
Right, exactly.
So in contrast to the Democrat, let's go to a Republican Congressman, Matt Gallagher. And he asks something else, which, again, it's just so perfect for the Republican to be asking this question.
It's also been reported that there have been UAP observed and interacting with and flying over sensitive military facilities, particularly, and not just ranges, but some facilities housing our strategic nuclear forces. One such incident allegedly occurred at Malmstrom Air Force Base, in which 10 of our nuclear ICBMs were rendered inoperable. At the same time, a glowing red orb was observed overhead. I'm not commenting on the accuracy of this. I'm simply asking you whether you're aware of it and whether you have any comment on the accuracy of that report.
Let me pass that to Mr. Bray. You've been looking at UAPs over the last 3 years.
All I can speak to is, what's within my cognizance of the UAP task force, and we have not looked at that incident.
Well, I would say, it's a pretty high-profile incident. I don't claim to be an expert on this, but that's out there in the ether. You're the guys investigating it. Who else is doing it?
If something was officially brought to our attention, we would look at it. There are many things that are out there in the ether that aren't officially brought to our attention.
So how would it have to be officially brought to your attention? I'm bringing it to your attention.
Sure.
This is pretty official.
Sure. So we'll go back and take a look at it, but generally there is some authoritative figure that says there is an incident that occurred. We'd like you to look at this. But in terms of just tracking what may be in the media that says that something occurred at this time, at this place, there are probably a lot of leads that we would have to follow up on. I don't think we are resourced to do that right now.
Well, I don't claim to be an authoritative figure, but for what it's worth, I would like you to look into it. And if for no other reason, you could dismiss it and say this is not worth wasting resources on.
So there you go.
How would there not be an official, report or something, some piece of bureaucracy, if a UFO deactivated 10 nuclear missiles at a military site?
Insanity. And then him talking about, we would have to be handed down by the authorities.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? The president?
Yeah,
the alien lizard over? What are you talking about, man?
Surely there's some sort of high-level military person who is in charge of those 10 deactivated nuclear weapons. Who's the question asker in this one?
This is Congressman, I believe, is Matt Gallagher, Republican.
I think he's a believer, man. I think he's a believer.
Yeah,
he's a believer and a good Republican.
Yeah, good old boy, and doing the Lord's work out there.
What about our nukes? What are these little green men messing with our nukes for? This is part of the reason for the hearings was to decide if UFOs posed any national security risks. If they're shutting down nuclear missiles, that's a national security risk.
I would say yes. And again, this speaks to the your point about clips later on, and about if there's more of a peaceful approach from the aliens, or I don't know. Either way, you can say all the
they're perfectly placed. They are
the
perfectly
Republican
politically opposed.
The nuke and all that kind of. Sorry, my dog is.
Yeah, it's okay. Go ahead. Get in the world eater. Yes, you're right. They're perfectly. Talk about theater. You had the Democrat playing the Democrat, the social justice Democrat. Have we tried talking to the aliens? Then you got the Republican playing the perfectly playing the part of the Republican at the UFO hearing. Yeah, well, they shut down our nukes. What do you say to that?
Yeah.
You couldn't write it any better. In fact, perhaps somebody did write it.
That would be the thinking. Yes.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
Scripted perfectly. Okay, so just thought there were some interesting things there, and obviously there's a lot more to it. We got links to the transcript and the full hour and a half. My dog is freaking out. I don't know why. Here's some more treats.
Is there an intruder or something? It seems like is Billy. Did he fall down a well? What's the deal?
Maybe, I don't know.